It's also a much more vital economy, because at a certain point, people who own the channel, the Walmarts, the big brand advertisers who own the markets and the media have less of an advantage now, because people will talk, and
Right.
you don't need marketing dollars to have a good reputation. Those smaller firms can come up more quickly. Now, I don't know I haven't thought through the implications of brand advertising when they come up, but the reality is,
I think people still care about brands.
I think they do too, but the concept of being told what a brand is gone. As far as
Yeah, but I mean, look, I work in the PR industry. I'm not a huge fan of advertising, but our agency is part of WPP, so I love advertising. And Sir Martin, he's great. So the aspect of brands having to deliver on the promise, I think, has always been there, right? If I buy a Ford because the ad says the Ford looks great in a low 3/4 shot in a wet winding road, and I can see myself in that car, and I can see that really hot chick with me, and then I buy the car and it's a piece of crap, I'm not going to be buying any more Fords, and none of my friends are going to hear that I love my Ford car anymore. So I think you have to deliver on the brand, based on if I'm influenced by what the marketing's telling me, and it has to live up to that promise. Is that the Mac versus PC thing right now? Who the hell knows? There's still more PCs being sold than Macs, right? So whether that's a legacy thing or whatever, but they've done a good Walmart type job of owning the stage, right? If I can mix all of Jesse's metaphors. So I think brands do have power in our lives, whether we believe it or not. But that doesn't mean that we aren't also looking for niche things and local things, and getting back to that 100-mile diet thing and doing all those sorts of things. I've always believed that social media, I use it in presentations. I mean, word of mouth was the original advertising, right? And all social media does is enabling word of mouth, on a global basis now, online. So this group here is not the only group who's going to hear about what went on here today. There's a global audience for this stuff if they care to find it. And we're enabling that.
Because I'm going to wade in. First of all, I don't think social media is just online. I think the biggest mistake people go, it's an online phenomenon. In fact, social media was parading in the parks in Paris in the 1920s. Mm-hmm. It's where society meets and they want to share something. In the past, brands didn't care. They just put a sledgehammer and wanted you to buy what they had to say. So just for the record, I think it's the most exciting time to be in the business, because the days of shouting loud, big multinational agencies, one-size-fits-all advertising, we'll get Britney Spears in the world, will fall in love with my cola, are over. You got to be relevant, you got to be meaningful, and you're only going to be relevant and meaningful if you narrow your segment. And you go to a much smaller group of individuals, and you say, for that group, I'm really going to be meaningful to them. And if they enjoy it enough, they'll find peers or other people that want the same thing, and that'll build your brand. But if we don't have brands in this world, we just have commoditization. So if we just have commoditization, we have the countries willing to produce it the cheapest winning, and the retailers that distribute it the cheapest winning. And that's not really the economic model I think we want if we still believe in capitalism, because you've just absolutely taken all the costs and put it to a handful of lords.
But what happened as well, a lot of packaged goods companies have gotten greedy, right? And, how many versions of Tide are there on the shelf?
Well, I heard there's 40 kinds of Oreo cookies.
Yeah.
And so I totally agree. They clog the pipelines. 3.3 million brands. Brand loyalty is at an all-time low. New product introduction failures at an all-time high. So the model has to change. But my point is not about brands tonight, whether you love them or hate them. My point is they have funded the most amazing creative renaissance that we've seen. If you happen to like movies and television, you like to have science fiction, you like to have authors, you like to have an industry that was funded on 19 failures for every hit television show. That creativity was brought to you by brands going, if I hitchhike my message on this audience, I'll win. And I think that's disappearing. And what I'm trying to understand,
I don't think it's disappearing. But I think it's fragmenting.
It's disappearing in the sense that more and more as data becomes, I've gone from spending my marketing money to investing it almost overnight. The criteria for investment is results and metrics. I can get metrics off of Google. I can get metrics off of store cash register. I struggle getting metrics off of whether that full-page ad worked in the Globe and Mail. But I worked on CBC. So the problem is the dollars are going to where people know, because there's no courage. So the dollars are going to where people believe I'm supposed to be moderating, not talking. Anyway.
I think that what you guys are all touching upon.
Some of the dollars.
Fragmenting.
It's fragmenting. It's
You're getting
some of the
micro
dollars that are
brands.
going-
But look, micro niches, micro
Newspapers'
markets.
revenue is down 25% 2 years in a row in the United States. It's not going. The industry is not going to survive.
So-
You have 4 or 5 flagship brands, but unless you can tell me that model will continue, because unless the advertising, like last year was an Olympic year, and it was an election year, and revenue was down. Classified ads, which funded a lot of newspapers, have been decimated.
So the issue, I think, and I can't see the audience, so I can only see a tall, dark figure in the back of the room.
Wait, though, I can see the.
I think the connection between all of your comments is scale.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we are going into a globalization where people are reconnecting on a small scale. But I don't see that as mutually exclusive with belonging to larger phenomena, of which brands tend to be the most effective, kind of on parallel with religion. Right? So I think what we're seeing is a problem where we used to get up on high. We used to get up and command a whole bunch of attention. And that still happens once in a while, but we don't know how to get there because we haven't focused on the steps. And that was my point about talent development. That everyone, the problem that capitalism is facing right now is the problem of the get-rich-quick myth. That it's a cornerstone of the American ideal. And it has a lot to do with why America got into trouble. Here in Canada, we're a little more small c conservative. And so we're a little more stable. But I think we all need to focus on, if we want to get to that pinnacle, if we want to get to that spot, what are the baby steps? What are the logistics? So one example I wanted to bring up briefly at the end is Leo Laporte. Right? And what Leo Laporte has done under the This Week in Technology or Twit.tv brand, sort of pre-Twitter, in that he's focused on a talent development process. People like Kevin Rose and Amber MacArthur and Andy Walker, who are themselves now starting to become the future media moguls in this sphere, because these guys have patiently focused on the baby steps. You know, the CPM and the ad rates that Leo Laporte's able to charge are some of the highest out there because his audience is loyal and they'll do anything that he says. So it's a patience, I think, that a lot of brands don't have. There's an openness to conflict that I think a lot of brands don't have. But I'm not totally doom and gloom, and that I think there's a way to get to both a profitable and sustainable and scalable model. It's just not a lot of people are patient enough to look at the messy details.
There's
of how
also
to
a
get
focus on the customer, whatever your customer is. Leo focuses on it. If you look at Craigslist, which has got to be one of the most dramatic business stories probably of the last 10 years. Craigslist's number one marketing guy is Craig Newmark, kind of dumpy looking. Craig goes and talks about Craigslist and Jim Buckmaster too, and all they talk about is we do whatever our users want. And then we ask them, are we doing what you want? And then we say, what do you want us to do? And then we do that. And all he does is respond. He's a customer service guy. That's what he calls himself. He spends all day responding to people on Twitter, on the blog, in email, by phone. He's a customer service guy, the guy who runs this giant company with
And I think that's
7th largest website in the world.
great entrepreneurship, right? I mean, always innovating, responding. I got one final question or thought for you guys. And this is the positive side, I think, being in a country like Canada. In the past, it really was shouting loud. Your drums were your television set, your percussion was retail, and that model an orangutan could have run. As long as you could shout your competition, you had a leading market share. And that was almost without exception. Today, these instruments we're hearing today are like, this orchestra is vast, and sometimes a single flute, connecting with Dave over there, he will tell his social world, and that thing will start growing and fostering. Isn't this the perfect country to perfect the new model? The fact that your client can bring you in and you can harness those resources. Imagine PepsiCo in the States, it would take them 6 weeks to organize a meeting of just the people internally that had influence on the brand, let alone another 6 months to get all the agencies involved. Where in Canada, we can just come together and start perfecting these models. So is that pipe dream or possible? And if it's possible, how do we go about doing it? How does Google, the managing director of Google Canada, go, that is my destiny to perfect it? And how do you do it with your audience with CBC and you, the Globe and Mail, and in the PR? How do we make Canada the petri dish for the way social media, marketing, consumers are going to come together and we're going to reinvent the stage?